As you know, we have the biggest business leaders in the world here today. They're going to walk away with a lot of checks for a lot of things that you're going to provide. And in the United States, it's probably 2 million jobs that we're talking about this visit. So, number one, I like visiting with you, and we've known each other very well, and I really believe we like each other a lot. And number two, for the United States, we've brought tremendous investment in and tremendous jobs, and we'll continue to service your great country very well.
President Trump today made his first stop in a 3-day, 3-stop so far planned trip. They may squeeze Turkey in. We'll see what happens. But President Trump has secured $600 billion investment from the Saudi Crown Prince. And he says that the visit to Saudi Arabia could bring 2 million jobs to the United States. It was during a bilateral meeting he had with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman today. And President Trump, who, by the way, by his 100th day in office, had already secured $5.2 trillion in private and foreign investments in American businesses. And that's set to create an estimated 451,000 American jobs. He says that this new economic partnership with Saudi Arabia could bring 2 million jobs to the United States. So we'll see what the actual number turns out to be over the years. He was joined on the trip by several of his cabinet members. Secretary of State Marco Rubio makes sense. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutkin makes sense. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent makes sense. Energy Secretary Chris Wright makes sense. And of course, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth makes sense because of the largest defense sales agreement in history that was also included in here for Saudi Arabia to purchase nearly $142 billion in equipment from U.S. firms. So it kind of makes sense that Pete Hegseth was there. Also, where there were other members of the administration and CEOs of several companies, including Elon Musk. The White House published a fact sheet about what happened today. And the bullet point is that this strategic partnership for economic prosperity is about energy security, the defense industry, technology leadership, and access to global infrastructure and critical minerals. Let's stay on the wins of President Trump internationally and what has happened over the last couple of days, how it's being received. The Telegraph had this headline yesterday over in the UK. Very interesting that we obviously talked about the lowering of prices for pharmaceuticals due to this executive order of President Trump. What they zeroed in on was what President Trump said about the EU riding off of our American consumer bearing the cost of research and development as we pay exorbitant prices, way more than they pay in Europe for pharmaceutical goods. President Trump said the EU is nastier than China. I hadn't seen that headline or heard, I don't remember hearing that when President Trump said it, but it's so funny that is what they picked up on the other side of the pond. President Donald Trump took aim at the globalist-led European Union this week, declaring it nastier than China and exposing what he says are decades of unfair trade practices that have left American workers and industries in the dust. And he didn't pull any punches when he said that the European Union in many ways is nastier than China. He said, "We just started with them. They sell us 13 million cars. We sell them none. They flood our markets with agricultural goods. We can't get ours in. They don't take our products. We have all the cards." Now, and then, of course, we know about what he said about the pharmaceutical companies and how, we pay more than they do and we want the favored nation pricing. Now, it's very interesting to me, though. There's a reason why we don't sell a lot of cars into Europe. First of all, our cars are made for bigger roads and Europe has smaller roads. So even when people like cars, not that they don't put trade barriers, but we're never going to sell in the volumes that they do because our cars are made for 48 continental states that are all contiguous, and we have this huge landmass, and our roads are newer, our freeways are newer, our cities are newer. Remember, if you haven't been to Europe or if you've been to Europe, the streets are smaller. So in some places, our cars just don't work there. They're made for a different consumer. But then again, if we were to sell more cars there, maybe we would be selling more, Chevy Cruises and what have you. Even though we do produce those, GM does have subsidiaries in Europe that produces a lot of those cars that we see here. And then agricultural goods. Folks, some people are going to like this, but the agricultural goods and the meats are better in Europe because they do not pump them with so much hormones and pesticides and other things that we have here. Their processed foods are a lot safer than what we have here. Hopefully with RFK Jr. At HHS, they will make these changes permanent and our food will be safer. So anyway, I just want to put a little perspective on why it is that sometimes these products don't move in the European markets. Speaking about the markets, check this out. This is the economic news release from the U.S. Labor Statistics data today. The Consumer Price Index. Don't you love how late 90s, early 2000s, this website of the government still is? Yet I'm sure we're paying $1 billion a year probably to maintain this website, and that's why people keep getting mad in the government at Doge for finding waste like this. I wonder what the actual price tag is for this old school website. Reminds me back in the day when I used to jump on the bulletin boards to download pictures of Lamborghinis and Ferraris. They just had this old school text. For those of you on the internet a long time, you know what I'm talking about. But check this out, folks. Here is the big thing that the left and the Democrats were crying about, and now it is a reality. I'm talking about egg prices. U.S. egg prices plummeted 12.7%. It's the biggest monthly drop since George Orwell's 1984. Well, since the year 1984, not since the book came out in 1948. U.S. Egg prices nosedived by almost 13% in April, marking the steepest monthly decline since March 1984, according to the latest Consumer Price Index data released Tuesday. The average price for a dozen eggs fell to $5.12, down from a record $6.23 in March. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 5 of the 6 major grocery store food group indexes decreased in April. That was driven primarily by the 12.7% decrease in the index for eggs. Also, fish fell down, as did fruits and vegetables over the month. And cereal and bakery products also declined a bit by 0.5%. The index for food at home rose 2% over the last 12 months. Now let's put this in recent historic perspective, shall we? In January 2017, as Trump assumed office, the average price for a dozen eggs was about $1.32, and it remained relatively stable. So we're still paying a lot compared to recent history. When Joe Biden took office in January 2021, the average price for dozen grade eggs was a modest $1.47, so it went up a little bit. And then December of last year, that same dozen of eggs was $4.15. It went up, and now it's back down again. But nearly a 200% increase, and this is according to the Federal Reserve of St. Louis. So President Trump is absolutely getting things done, and things are getting done when it comes to the economy. All right, folks, we've got the framework. We've got some good news here. Remember that big, beautiful bill that President Trump wanted? That big, beautiful tax cut bill with all those juicy things like not being taxed on tips and overtime and other items. Well, folks, we have got the framework. House Republicans on the Ways and Means Committee, led by Chairman Jason Smith, have released the text of a monumental new tax reform package titled The One Big Beautiful Bill. The bill, strongly backed by President Donald Trump, is aimed at delivering historic cuts to American families, workers, and small business. What we're going to be seeing, according to this 389-page bill, includes a long list of pro-growth, America First provisions that echo many of the successful features of the original 2017 Trump tax cuts, but this time they added some firepower. For instance, enhanced child tax credit. It's going to boost the child tax credit from $2,000 to $2,500 per child through 2028. And it's going to require Social Security numbers for eligibility, okay, so that undocumented individuals can't take advantage of the child tax credit. Remember, this is part of President Trump's plan to secure our border and crack down on illegal immigration, taking away the incentives for people to stay here illegally. There will be no tax on tips. So it creates a full income tax deduction for tips earned in traditional tipped industries, service industries, etc. Again, through all of these are through 2028. And of course, no tax on overtime pay. This allows workers to deduct qualified overtime compensation from their overall taxable income. All of this is added to the extension of the individual tax rate cuts that President Trump had originally proposed. It makes the Trump-era tax rate reductions permanent, eliminating this year's expiration. And then there'll be an overall increase in the standard deduction by adding a temporary $1,500 boost for individuals and $1,000 for heads of household from 2025 to 2028. Okay, folks, let's get into what I think is absolutely fantastic news, maybe the best news of the week. I know we're only on Tuesday, but it may end up being one of the biggest news stories of the week or the biggest wins for President Trump this week and for the American people. We have a Trump judge smacking down, in a way, all of the previous activist judges. And let me read you the headline from The Hill of all places. First judge approves Trump invoking Aliens Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans. So yeah, we have a federal judge that is going against the grain here. And as Axios put it, it's a first. It's a first with this judge allowing Trump to use Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans. This is fantastic news, folks. The Trump administration can invoke the Aliens Enemy Act to deport alleged Trinidad gang members, a federal judge ruled today, Tuesday, May 13th. The U.S. District Judge Stephanie Haynes is the first to approve the Trump administration's use of the 18th century wartime law to quickly carry out deportations of alleged Venezuelan gang members to El Salvador. Haynes determined that as long as the government provides sufficient notice and due process, President Trump can remove members of a foreign terrorist organization, which Tren de Aragua was designated back in February. The judge said the government has to provide a 21-day notice in a language understood by the migrants and an opportunity to be heard before deporting people under the Alien Enemies Act. That time frame is longer than the 24-hour notice the government has asserted it needs to give migrants. Okay, so this is a great win with a bit of a but. So instead of them being able to grab illegal aliens, determine that they're in Nicaragua and get them out of here within a day, it now is, to this judge, says it has to be 3 weeks. They have to provide a 21-day notice. Once again, I don't understand how judges, whether a more fair judge like this judge, who I understand is a Trump appointee, can just make policy like that. I mean, it's either one or the other. Either, and if I'm misunderstanding this, please put it down below. But it seems to me if it is the executive branch, and the executive branch has its rules and regulations, that the executive branch they can change those rules and regulations. And if it's law, then it has to be changed by Congress. How can a judge just say, oh, we want 21 days and not one? So if one is wrong, because Trump and his people are asserting that, how does a judge have the power to assert something differently and have that enforced? I don't understand this, folks. Maybe someone can clarify this for me, or maybe just maybe I'm right and the judiciary doesn't have power to make policy, just to interpret the law. But here is the big win. Having done its job, the court now leaves it to the political branches of the government and ultimately the people who elect those individuals to decide whether the laws and those executing them to continue to reflect their will. Yep, that's the bottom line. We elected President Trump. We elected this executive branch, and they are doing the will of the people. And if the left and the Democrats don't like it, then they can put up someone better than Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or whatever Marxists they want to put up in 2028 and have them legally and lawfully win the next election of 2028 if they don't like it. Let's not forget that federal judges in at least 3 other states had issued orders blocking deportations under the Alien Enemies Act. The administration had invoked the law to quickly deport undocumented immigrants, according to Axios, often with little or no due process. That, of course, is an Axios spin. Let's hop over to The Hill that has a little bit more information on this, saying That, of course, as I just covered, that Stephanie Haynes' ruling contrasts with other federal judges who have ruled that President Trump illegally invoked the wartime statute. But she says that Trump is within his rights to deport members and, of course, a Trump appointee. She emphasized her, quote, unflagging obligation is to apply the law as written. So I don't know if that 21-day comes from previously written law. Now, this comes as the American Civil Liberties Union, which has filed a wave of lawsuits across the country's different courts challenging Trump's use of the AEA, is calling on the Supreme Court to immediately take up the issue and swiftly provide a nationwide resolution. The 1798 law enables authorities to summarily deport migrants amid an invasion or predatory incursion by a foreign power. All 3 times the law was invoked previously were in times of war, but Trump has looked to use it against alleged Venezuelan gang members. And within hours of invoking the law in mid-March, the administration used it to deport more than 100 migrants to the Salvadoran mega prison, CICOT. Judicially, the big thing about Haynes here wasn't her resolving whether President Trump can use the law to remove gang members, but focusing on President Trump's power to use the law against foreign terrorist organizations. And that's why her ruling is at odds with the activist judges who have ruled differently. Those judges ruled that President Trump did not have the power to use the AEA to target gang members. And the law was not meant to be used outside of an invasion or incursion. But of course, we are in the middle of an invasion and incursion. This is 2025, and since 2021, we have had people coming in from the Maduro regime, operatives of a foreign nation using new age warfare, and this is President Trump responding to that new age warfare, which of course also makes it that Biden, who is in cooperation by allowing this with a foreign nation, would technically, in my book, be guilty of treason. Bravo, Judge Haynes, for getting this right. I anticipate, at least in this judge's jurisdiction, we will be seeing a lot more mass deportation of these Trinidad gangsters using the Alien Enemies Act. All right, now let's get into some more good news. Good news for us, but news that may have people like, I don't know, the Biden family, General Milley, Dr. Anthony Fauci, and others shifting in their diapers, including Adam Schiff and members of the Unselect Committee. We've got this, that the Justice Department is probing Biden's last-minute auto pen pardons. Well, doesn't this sound like a bit of juicy good news? In a news conference happened today, we have U.S. Attorney for D.C., or the outgoing acting interim U.S. Attorney for D.C., Ed Martin, saying that the Justice Department is reviewing some of the last-minute pardons issued by President Biden. Now, he didn't comment on when asked if he launched the investigation into members of Congress on the Unselect Committee, but said pardons need scrutiny. Now, let's turn to what Ed Martin said a few days ago about the plenary power that the president has of issuing these pardons, but how there seems to be some corruption this time around. Check this out.
We've never seen pardons of the scope, and it looks at least like something that you could be corrupt. When Bill Clinton pardoned Mark Rich, and it turns out that Mark Rich had paid a boatload of money to one of Clinton's friends, lawyers, that's not corrupt. It's not criminal because the plenary power of the pardon. But in the case of Joe Biden and his pardons, they were so specific, back 14 years, covering everything you've ever done. And when I say specific, they were broad, but they had time stuff on them. It was and that least leads to questions, because the plenary power is true, but the question is what was going on here, and I did get responses from some of them, and those things are ongoing.
What was going on here, folks? What was going on here is very obvious, and it was what sparked the investigation by Ed Martin to begin with. Well, we looked at this about a month and a half ago. Remember when Ed Martin came in as the acting U.S. Attorney for D.C., he started probing Biden's pardons because of the auto pen scandal. And that is why they're looking at those last-minute pardons. If Joe Biden didn't know what the hell was going on and he wasn't the one who signed them, well, that seems like it could be problematic, right? It seems like it could be problematic. Outgoing acting U.S. Attorney for D.C. and now incoming pardon attorney Ed Martin said today that the Justice Department is reviewing Joe Biden's last-minute pardons amid the growing auto pen scandal. And when we go and look at this specifically, we can see that January 19th, the day before J20 2025 pardons, included members of Biden's own family, Gerald Lundergan, I don't remember who that is, the Unselect Committee, General Milley, and Anthony Fauci. They all had the same exact auto pen signature. Who had the power of the auto pen? And did Joe Biden actually sign these? Were these actually his pardons? That may be what's being probed here, folks. Man, it would be awesome if we got justice over this, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be awesome if these were thrown out? Either way, with President Trump and this DOJ not falling by the wayside or being easily scared or getting off of the case, except for maybe we can make some, we're still waiting for those Jeffrey Epps stuff. But it seems like members of that Unselect Committee and members of the family of the Biden crime family, and of course Fauci and traitor General Milley, working for traitor Joe Biden, they may be shifting in their defense, folks. They may be very nervous right now. All right, thanks for joining me on this report. We've got some good news and some good progress. Please do me a favor. If you haven't done so yet, the biggest thing you can do is hit that like button. It sounds small, but it makes a big difference to me and the growth of this channel. Also, if you haven't hit the notification bell, do so that you can be notified. And if you want to support this channel, hit the join button down below. I don't have any sponsors, and let's just say that they make it tougher for us on this platform, right of center, to earn a living than just about anyone else on this platform. So if you want to support the work, please hit the join button down below. And also, if you want to get extra content on things I can't cover here or I don't cover here, and you want to hear me report the news with absolutely no filter, please check out the BCP podcast at bcpextras.com and therealbcp.com. Until the next one, ciao, goodbye, God bless.